Hey there, this is Debesh, the info security researcher. There is a big news, you must have read it. Last month, Microsoft released its own open source Linux operating system called Azure Linux. Yes, it is not a joke, it is true. 25 years ago, the ex CEO of Microsoft, Steve Ballmer, called Linux a cancer, and Microsoft tried their best to destroy Linux and open source movements. But they failed. In 2016, the current CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, publicly announced that Microsoft loves Linux. Why? Because Microsoft adopted Linux for its top revenue earning business, Azure Cloud. Because Linux is more stable than their own Windows operating system. And a few years ago, during ransomware attacks, the Azure Cloud business completely ran on Linux. And a majority of the Azure Cloud clients, more than 65% of the clients, they prefer Linux OS to their Windows OS because Linux is more stable. And don't forget that Microsoft also acquired GitHub. And in 2016, they became the platinum member of the Linux Foundation. So they have planned it that they will develop something in open source and Linux because they cannot do their business properly with their own software. They need help from the open source movements and the Linux. So they have their own Linux divisions and open source divisions. So now let us see what Azure Cloud is, Azure Linux OS is. Azure Linux, previously Civil Mariner, is a free and open source Linux distribution developed by Microsoft and starting with version 4.0 based on Fedora Linux. It is a base container OS for Microsoft Azure services and the graphical component of WSL. Overview. Azure Linux is being developed by the Linux Systems Group of Microsoft for its edge network services and as part of its cloud infrastructure. The company uses it as the base Linux for containers in the Azure Stack HCI implementation of Azure Kubernetes services. Microsoft also uses Azure Linux in Azure IoT Edge to run Linux workloads on Windows IoT and as a backend distro to host the Western compositor for WSL. So, it is very interesting. Microsoft really loves Linux. That is why they have adopted Linux for its business only because they cannot run their top revenue earning business Azure Cloud without Linux and open source. That is why they are doing it and now they have released their open source Azure Linux 4.0. So, a very interesting things are happening. Let us wait and watch what comes next.